Hello, I'm Matt Donnelly, and this is Viper Bites Preseason Takeaway Edition. So before you get into that regular season, before you enter those fantasy football drafts, take a second and listen to what I have to say. I'm going to break down some of my takeaways for all 32 franchises here now that the preseason has officially wrapped up. Now the regular season, you are on the clock. Let's start with the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think we're any closer now than we were prior to the preseason and trying to figure out which one of these running backs is going to be the running back that leads this Falcons team. You know, Tyler Algier there, he had 2 rushing touchdowns in that preseason finale, but it was really Cordell Patterson and Damian Williams who were getting all the run with the ones earlier on. What I do know is that Desmond Ridder, he looks like he could be the real deal when it comes to playing under center, except that's going to be in 2023. That means I fully expect Marcus Mariota to play most of the season and perform well enough to keep Ridder on the bench until late in the season. Next up, the Arizona Cardinals. When DeAndre Hopkins returns, this offense is going to be dangerous. Kyler Murray already appears to be a better play caller than Cliff Kingsbury has ever been. So if I'm Arizona, I'm giving Kyler Murray more freedom at the line of scrimmage to check and call those plays. Arizona's backfield is really interesting to me. Look, while James Conner, he appears to be that goal line back, historically speaking, he hasn't been able to stay on the field. Now, the law of averages say that he was able to play last season. That means this season, expect the injury bug to probably creep up sooner than later. Enter Eno Benjamin to the equation, who looks to be more than capable of filling in for Chase Edmonds in that pass-catching role in this offense. It also wouldn't surprise me to the least here to see that Keontae Ingram making this final cut. And but I'm not quite as confident in Darrell Williams making the cut, probably because he already lost 1 L. He's probably going to take another L here at the end of preseason. For the Baltimore Ravens, we know that the Ravens are likely to kick it back old school, well, at least back to 2019 there, when both Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram each ran for over 1,000 yards. Problem is, who is going to run the ball this season? Gus Edwards, he's starting the season on the pop right now. And as far as J.K. Dobbins, that injury and recovery, that appears to be continuing on going into the regular season. J.K. Dobbins is a real interesting topic here of discussion here for fantasy managers because we don't know what to expect when it comes to J.K. Dobbins, and there is a lot of risk. The reward is great, but I don't know if that risk is quite meeting where the reward is as of yet. Now, for the Buffalo Bills, Isaiah McKenzie, he looks to have won that battle in the slot over Jamison Crowder. Even with Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, and Dawson Knox, one has to think that McKenzie is a great value late in fantasy football drafts. In Buffalo, the slot receiver has been productive. Look at Cole Beasley over the last 3 seasons there with the Bills. In those 3 seasons, Beasley caught 231 passes. He saw 325 targets. That led to 2,438 yards. I doubt McKenzie's going to see 100 targets, but even if he manages to see 80 or so, he can be a solid flex play for you. Now on to Carolina. Baker Mayfield won this quarterback competition. Maybe one is not the best choice of wording here because if you look at what Matt Rule basically said, that Mayfield was the lesser of 2 evils. Then Mayfield went 9 for 15 for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns, whereas Sam Darnold, he went out and got himself hurt with that high ankle sprain in that Panthers preseason finale. After an erratic couple weeks of practice, Mayfield looks to be dialing it in just as the season's about to begin, and that shoulder, it's looking healthier. Maybe that's probably because that there's a bit of a huge chip on his shoulder ahead of that week 1 matchup against the Cleveland Browns. Now, Browns are going to Browns, so how ironic is it that the Cleveland Browns are literally paying Baker Mayfield in an attempt to defeat them? Mayfield, heading into this one, not going to sit here and be a robot and say it doesn't matter, because it does. So look for Baker Mayfield to come and have a big week number 1 against his former team there in Cleveland. Now, sticking in Ohio, we're going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. This offense is going to be ridiculous. It only feels that the only way it feels like they're going to get this team off the field is after they score a touchdown. From one of the worst offensive lines just a season ago to one of the best after the additions of Ted Karras, Lyle Collins, and Alex Kappa, Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase is going to be a problem. So will Burrow to T. Higgins. Heck, Burrow to Joe Mixon, that's going to be a problem for teams to defend as well. For Mixon, he appears in line once again for a huge volume type season, and we all know that volume is king in them fantasy football streets. Next up, the Cleveland Browns. We talked about how they're going to be seeing Baker Mayfield here to start off the season. Well, Deshaun Watson, the guy they kind of chose over Baker Mayfield, he is suspended for 11 games, but yet he's still able to return in week number 12 against the Houston Texans, which not only is where he played a season ago or the last time that we saw him in action, but it's right before the accrued season kind of kicks off there. So really weird how that all kind of worked out. That all said, expect this Browns team to lean heavily on the run and on their defense in order to keep their playoff hopes alive. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, if he doesn't get dealt, both have standalone value in this offense, while Amari Cooper will look to be hogging some targets there, but don't expect the yardage and the touchdowns to follow those targets. Looking for a deep sleeper, maybe a tight end? How about David Njoku here? He got all the work with the ones all throughout the preseason here. And when you have a quarterback who lacks the ability to throw that deep ball, there's a good chance that volume is going to be in play for the tight end here. Speaking of tight ends, we know the Chicago Bears, they have a good one. These Bear pass catchers behind Darnell Mooney and that aforementioned Cole Kmet are bad. I mean, like really bad. Justin Fields literally had better passing options during his time at Ohio State than he does with the Chicago Bears. In the finale of the preseason for the Bears, Fields would go on to throw for 156 yards, 3 touchdowns, post a 146.9 passer rating, run the ball twice for 11 yards, leading the Bears to 3 touchdowns on their first 4 possessions. For those in fantasy, Fields possesses a weekly QB1 upside as long as there are going to be designed run plays in the book for him. If Matt Eberle is smart, which I think he probably is, he is going to design that and have that set up there. And Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, they are going to get plenty of volume. Don't you worry about that. It wouldn't surprise me to see Darnell Mooney surpass 150 targets and Cole Kmet to see at least 100 targets of his own. Heading to Big D, the Dallas Cowboys, you're next on the clock. Dak Prescott, he has lost a few pass-catching options there as both Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson have found themselves new homes. Michael Gallup, he's still working his way back in the lineup after tearing his ACL late last season. So look for the rookie here, Jalen Tolbert, to step up and for Tony Pollard to see significant upgrade in snaps out of the slot. Defensively speaking, this Cowboys team will be getting after opposing signal callers with Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence in a competition, doing their thing to see who can get back to the quarterback the first. And with rookie Sam Williams, here's a name to remember, looking to rotate in there after having an impressive preseason himself. Heading to the Denver Broncos, the chemistry between Russell Wilson and Courtland Sutton has been apparent throughout the preseason, having fantasy managers just gush over Sutton as per his ADP as it has skyrocketed compared to where we last saw it at the end of the 2021 season. Watching the Broncos preseason finale, Justin Simmons, he came on the air and said the one player that is about to do some big things in 2022 is Jerry Jeudy. We know Wilson can support 2 viable receiving options after seeing him do it in Seattle with both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, but Judy's kiss of death from a season ago still cuts a little bit deep and is still a little too fresh in my mind. Now, the Detroit Lions, how good can this Lions offense be with Jared Goff? I don't think it's as bad as you think. In fact, I low-key love this group of skilled players, especially when rookie Jameson Williams gets inserted into this lineup. If Jared Goff is to go down with an injury or miss any significant time, the Lions will struggle with the combination of boil and blow. I mean, that just doesn't sound good at all. In 2019, Christian McCaffrey, he became just the 3rd player in NFL history behind both Roger Craig and Marshall Faulk to run for at least 1,000 yards and catch 1,000 yards in the same season. Can DeAndre Swift do this and become the 4th player? Deuce Staley on Swift's quest to become the 4th running back to accomplish his feat? When I heard about it, I jumped through the roof. And managers of fantasy, you should be jumping through the roof too, because I don't think this is out of the realm of possibilities of things that DeAndre Swift can do in this offense. Now, talk about offenses that have kind of been gashed and taken a little bit piece by piece. How about the Green Bay Packers now? I am full out drinking the Romeo Doubs Kool-Aid right now. He has outplayed fellow rookie Christian Watson at every turn. But let's pump the brakes here. Let's be a little bit more realistic. Day 3 receivers have reached top 36 status in fantasy less than 2% of their time during their rookie campaigns. That said, Dobbs and Aaron Rodgers, hey, they're lunch buddies, and we know how that works. If you go for breakfast, you're going to have a huge season. If you're going for lunch, it's going to be okay. What we can't ignore, though, is how Aaron Rodgers feels when it comes to Allen Lazard. Here's a few quotes right now on Aaron Rodgers and Allen Lazard. He is our dirty work guy for most of his career here. Now he's getting an opportunity to be the number one receiver. I'm not worried about him at all stepping into that role. If Aaron Rodgers isn't worried, you probably shouldn't be either. But hey, let's keep looking at this. Who I don't think we need any patience with is Allen. I really think Allen is ready to make a jump to be that number one wide receiver. Then Rodgers would go on to say, obviously, Allen Lazard is going to step into that number one role. And I think it's going to be a very seamless transition for him. So again, Rodgers believes in Lazard. You probably should too. Now, heading to the Houston Texans, this is a team I believe in here because I don't think they get the respect that they deserve, especially for fantasy purposes. I love this Texans team probably more than I should. There is value at every position from Davis Mills, who was one of the most accurate rookie quarterbacks ever last season. And he's got himself Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, Brevin Jordan as targets. He has easily top 24 potential within his sights. Brandon Cooks is finally starting to get the respect that he deserves. And by the end of 2022, he could finish as a top 10 receiving wide receiver, thanks to the possibility of 150 targets being flooded his way. As for Brevin Jordan, he has an 80% route participation mark during the preseason, which typically translates very well. In fact, historically, it typically lends itself to top 12 tight end type seasons. And of course, I also have to mention Dameon Pierce, who is no longer an under-the-radar prospect. The icing on the cake came against the 49ers in the preseason after Pierce averaged 6.2 yards per carry on 6 attempts and scored a touchdown. Pierce will be the unquestioned RB1 in Houston. However, this Texans team is still bad and will likely be throwing the ball more often than not. Now, the Indianapolis Colts. Matt Ryan, he has himself his new Julio Jones, and Ryan has historically fed the ball to his top targets, averaging 161 targets per season to his number one wide receivers, dating back to 2009. Whether it was Roddy White, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Matt Ryan has had his wide receivers inside the top 12 in every year but two. Those years, 2021, Cordero Patterson, he finished as the RB15. And then back in 2013, Julio Jones, he went down with a broken foot. Enter Harry Douglas. Yes, Harry Douglas, who still happened to turn into a wide receiver 23. This all bodes well for Michael Pittman. Pittman and Wentz saw 25.7% target share and was 14th in targets. You expect both those categories to see a serious uptick here with Matt Ryan under center. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, there has not been much to get excited about in Duval County in the last 6 years. With a 28-69 record, the Jaguars own the second worst record over that time. Perhaps the winds of change are coming as Jacksonville drafted well this past April Trayvon Walker, Devin Lloyd, Chad Mamba, and spent a lot of money in free agency to have playmakers on both sides of the ball, including key additions of linebacker Foye Olakun and pass catchers Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. Lawrence, he targeted Kirk 8 times on 21 attempts in week 2 of the preseason, so that should give you a pretty good idea of what to expect once the regular season kicks off. As for the backs, Travis Etienne, he looks like he's 100% as he's played 88% of the first team snaps, while James Robinson looks to be getting himself ready for week 1 after rupturing his Achilles late in last season. And when we look at James Robinson, we do have a bit of a template of what to expect there based on what Cam Akers has been able to do last season and what he's doing currently. Now, for the Kansas City Chiefs, look, is it me or does this offense look even better without Tyreek Hill in it? Seriously, Mahomes has looked unstoppable as he continues to spread the ball around. Travis Kelce, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, even Jody Fortson and Justin Watson are getting involved. Mahomes went 12 of 19 for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Washington Commanders in that Week 2 preseason contest. Has anyone seen Ronald Jones? With all this hype around Isaiah Pacheco, Jones finds himself clearly on the bubble. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he has worked with the first team 64% of the time. And when he hasn't been in there, the next guy to tap in has been Pacheco. So for Jones, I don't know where he fits in right now. But hopefully for the Chiefs, they have some kind of plan, or else he's probably looking for a new job here sooner rather than later. Now for the Las Vegas Raiders, this team will only go as far as this offensive line will take them. Brandon Parker, who looked like he was in line to earn that starting right tackle position, he was put on the IR, and that essentially ended his season. Alex Leatherwood, hey, he was on the chopping block. Maybe he still is. Maybe he's not. I don't know what to do. After Parker's injury there and his stint on the IR, I find it hard to believe that the Raiders would let Alex Leatherwood go. At least not cut him, trade him maybe. But I mean, they got to find themselves some help there on that offensive line, especially at that right tackle position. This defense, especially their secondary, looks much improved. And that Vegas line and that defense, that is going to be the key, especially when you have teams in your division like the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos. Offensively speaking, Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, they look like they haven't missed a beat since cranking it up way back when at Fresno State. Hunter Renfrow continues to be underappreciated, and I'm not too sure what to expect from Darren Waller, whose lack of participation is somewhat alarming. In the backfield, Kenyon Drake, he was released, paving the way for the Raiders to run Josh Jacobs right into the ground after not picking up his fifth-year option, while giving Zamir White a closer look at the future. For the Los Angeles Chargers, man, is there a better team top to bottom, offensively and defensively, than the Chargers right now? If you look at this team, there's talent everywhere, except maybe behind Austin Eckler. With Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree currently ahead of Isaiah Spiller on the depth chart, that tells me you can expect Austin Eckler early and often in this season. Both Roundtree and Kelly have averaged less than 3.3 yards per carry over their careers, and I anticipate that Spiller will ascend up that depth chart to a point in this which the Chargers feel comfortable spelling off Eckler from time to time. Now, for the Los Angeles Rams, maybe it's precautionary. Maybe there's something more concerning when it comes to Matthew Stafford's elbow. Perhaps this whole elbow thing is media-driven, like the bloody sock of Kurt Schilling years ago. We like to make things bigger deals than they actually perhaps are. The things that are a big deal, this offensive line, it leaves me with more questions than answers, and this lack of depth throughout this lineup right now is a major red flag. At running back, you have Sean McVay talk about splitting touches between Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, with neither appearing 100% right now. Henderson, he may be actually closer than Akers is coming to week number 1. For the Miami Dolphins, we've seen the good, we've seen the bad, and we've seen the ugly when it comes to Tua Tagovailoa's passes during the offseason and into the preseason. In fact, the film guy basically got fired on Twitter, so he's no longer a social media guy because maybe he got a underthrow that probably shouldn't have been posted there. Now, anyway, Tagovailoa finished the preseason going 6 of 7 for 121 yards and a touchdown with a 158.3 passer rating, including a 51-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill. More impressive may be that A-Dog. We always talk about Tua Tagovailoa being a dink and dunk type passer. Well, with an average depth of target of 18.6 yards, it appears that Miami and Tagovailoa are looking to unleash this offense, and they're doing this as Jalen Waddle sold out last week. So I'm telling you, this offense, I can just imagine how explosive this is going to be. It may even blow some people's minds. Now, the Minnesota Vikings, I hate when people have a string of bad luck. BC Johnson, he cannot catch a break. After tearing his ACL during camp last year, it appears he has torn the opposite one in the preseason finale for the Vikings. With that said, one man's ending is often another man's new beginning. As for Amir Smith, Marset, and Jalen Naylor, they will both have an opportunity to make some plays in this offense. Minnesota essentially kept all their starters off the field during this preseason, leaving us to wonder what Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, and Justin Jefferson can do in this Kevin O'Connell offense. We do know that Sean Marion and Kellen Mond experiments, those are done with, as the Vikings went out and they traded with the Raiders to bring in Nick Mullins to be the backup to Kirk Cousins for the 2022 season. New England Patriots, please stop sleeping on Jacoby Myers. Throughout Patriots camp, Myers has hauled in more receptions for Mac Jones than any other pass catcher. As of August 26, Myers has 41 receptions, with Jonnu Smith next in line with 25 receptions over this time with Mac Jones. Last year, training camp, Myers was overlooked after being the best receiver in camp, and all he did was lead the Patriots in receptions and targets last season. Once again, despite being underappreciated, Myers is the best receiver in camp, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least if he sees 130 or more targets here this season, even with the additions of Devontae Parker and Tyquan Thornton. Now, Jonnu Smith, I just got this feeling right now, a little bit of vibes, a little bit of that gut feeling right now that Jonnu Smith is going to do good things this season. Expect that gap between him and Hunter Henry to be a lot closer than what that ADP currently suggests. The New Orleans Saints, whatever Jameis Winston is doing, it is working. Prior to Winston playing in the Saints finale, it had been nearly 300 days since his last bit of action there. This Saints team has a potentially potent offense with Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry, and possibly Michael Thomas. Is he going to play? Is he not? I don't know. Water is wet and his hamstring is sore. So Winston, he's going to chuck up some YOLO balls to both Chris Olave, but keep an eye on Marquez Callaway, who is a player he developed a little bit of chemistry with last season and who likes to run deep. And we know Jameson Winston, he likes to throw that deep ball. For the New York Giants, Saquon Barkley appears to be back in the good graces of fantasy managers, and he has seen his ADP creep from basically the fourth round to the back end of the first, at least to the early second. The reason why that we justify this move is look at the depth behind him. You got Matt Breida and Tony Williams, Gary Brightwell, Jashawn Corbin, all of which could be cut, and no one would even notice. Still not enough? How about these wide receivers? Kenny Golladay, he's out there tripping people on Madden. Kadarius Toney, he can't stay healthy. Sterling Shepard is returning after an Achilles tear. And Wan'Dale Robinson is still just a rookie. Okay. I do love myself some Wan'Dale Robinson. He is one of my guys that I refuse to leave drafts without. Hopefully Daniel Jones can keep those receivers healthy and on the field. Although Colin Johnson, he's already been lost for the season. And Jones's preseason numbers are hardly stomachable at this point, going 20 of 26 for 185 yards. Good news is that completion percentage is around 77%. The bad news, he's averaged about 7.1 yards per attempt. For the New York Jets, is it me or does this offense actually look better with Joe Flacco under center than it did with Zach Wilson prior to his injury? Look, Flacco is still going to Flacco. He's still going to make some bad decisions from time to time. Look at that pick he threw against the Giants in the preseason finale. But he seemed to give a boost to both Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. Is Flacco elite? No. In fact, he's 0-5 with the Jets, averaging 228 yards per game, but he has thrown 8 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions. We know Flacco was a fan of Garrett Wilson, complimenting him all throughout camp. And Garrett Wilson, he says he likes the way that Flacco throws the ball. He throws with some nice touch and does it just right, the way he likes it. Now, in the backfield, you would like to believe that Breece Hall, the more talented back here, is going to be the man. However, Jets beat report has basically said it is Carter working ahead of Hall as of August 25th. And we know that Michael Carter, he is still able to be a valuable asset moving forward, even if he's in a 50-50 timeshare, going back to his North Carolina days with Javonte Williams there. So I'm not worried about Michael Carter, but this is a little bit alarming when it comes to Breece Hall. Hopefully Breece Hall gets a little bit more share as the season goes on. Maybe we're looking at 60-40 or 65-35. But right now, this looks like it could be close to 50-50. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts loves himself some A.J. Brown. Now, why wouldn't you? Throughout camp, we have witnessed Hurts hitting Brown between 2 defenders, throwing with touch. We've also seen Brown get himself open against the likes of Xavier Howard. So you know that connection is going to be available all season long. And let's not forget about Devonta Smith here, opposite of Brown, who most of us have already forgotten about. And hopefully defenses, they don't forget about it, because if they do, it's going to be a huge mistake. Defensively, Nakobe Dean is the real deal. I still don't know how he dropped to the third round this past April's draft. Injuries be damned, this kid can play. Playing 24 snaps in the Eagles finale, the rookie earned himself an 85.4 run defense grade and a 77.4 PFF grade. As for the Pittsburgh Steelers, this Steelers offensive line is historically bad. Rookie quarterbacks and bad offensive lines are not usually a good combination, so fully expect Mitchell Trubisky to be the day one starter. Against the Detroit Lions in that tune-up game there, Trubisky dropped a couple dimes in there and went 15 of 19 for 160 yards. Going back to last April's draft, Greg Cassell was on record saying that George Pickens was the best receiver in this class. Talent has never been the question. It has always been that other stuff. Luckily for Pickens, Mike Tomlin, he is pretty good dealing with that other stuff. And it wouldn't shock me if Pickens leads this year's class in fantasy points, even with Trubisky throwing off his back foot. For the San Francisco 49ers, guess what? Jimmy Garoppolo is still there. We are less than 10 days away from the regular season kicking off here, and the trade market is gone barren. There's no heating up, and the regular season is now among us. San Francisco must decide whether to cut him or keep him. Since 2017, without Garoppolo as the quarterback there, the 49ers are 8-27. With him under center, San Francisco is 31-15. That doesn't really mean a whole heck of a lot, but I just thought it was kind of interesting to throw out there. There is no denying that Trey Lance is talented. He can do things with his legs. His arm talent is off the charts, but 49ers faithful, need to temper their expectations as Lance has attempted just 318 passes going back to college and only 71 in the NFL. Last season, this 49ers team, it ranked 5th in runs per contest there at 30.4. Preseason note, Trey Sermon played 100% of the first team running back snaps, but that was without Elijah Mitchell. That was without Jeff Wilson being out on the lineup there. I find it difficult to believe that Sermon is going to be able to hold off Jordan Mason. I mean, Jordan Mason, that hype train, it is going. It is going. Get on board the Jordan Mason hype train. A healthy Mitchell should receive a very healthy share of touches coming out of this 49ers backfield. For the Seattle Seahawks, we all saw the video. Pete Carroll warming up that arm, getting loose there, taking some snaps in camp and letting it rip. Maybe he's starting to realize that he has basically 2 backup quarterbacks, one of which he had a name as a starter. And that happened to be Geno Smith, who won the job by default after Drew Lock tossed not 1, not 2, but 3 interceptions in that season as the Seahawks closed out their preseason schedule. Pete Carroll said, Geno Smith, he earned the starting quarterback job over Drew Lock, who just ran out of time. Okay, Pete, whatever you say. At wide receiver, although Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are talented, I simply can't trust either to be consistent with an inconsistent quarterback play. Seattle may regret not getting more heavily involved in those Baker Mayfield sweepstakes early on in the offseason here. And, hey, it looks like the preseason solved nothing when it comes to the running back position. This looks like it could be a committee. Those hoping for a Kenneth Walker lead back scenario, they're going to have to wait until 2023. Between Walker dealing with injuries during camp and eventually having hernia surgery, you have to remember, Rashad Penny, he was pretty good at the back end of the season. In fact, he was the most efficient back over the last 6 games of the 21 season there, earning himself this opportunity here early on in 2022. How about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Remember Will Smith in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air there, gift, where Smith enters the room, looks around, and it's like empty? That was like Tom Brady coming back to Tampa Bay after taking some time for himself, some me time, and realized that all his offensive linemen, they were gone. Alex Kappa, he went to Cincinnati via free agency. Ali Marpet, he retired. Ryan Jensen, he suffered a significant injury, as did Aaron Steeney. Tristan Wirfs and Robert Hainsey, they also suffered injuries during camp. Now, give Brady a little bit of credit. In his lone preseason action, he went 6 of 8 for 44 yards. And really, he's 45 years old. He doesn't need this preseason. He knows what he's doing. Now, Brady, he's already on the same page with Chris Godwin, with Mike Evans, with Russell Gage. And you can add Julio Jones to that list as well. Although they will probably have to monitor how Julio's doing because Julio, hey, he's no spring chicken either. That's probably a good reason why he goes to Tampa Bay. Now, Rachaad White. Man, I love myself some Rachaad White. He is going to be a problem for opposing defenses. Now, Leonard Fournette, he was on the field with Brady, even on 3rd and long situations there. So that is what it is. But there's no way that the Buccaneers are going to be able to continue to deny Rachaad White touches, especially considering how well Brady utilized another back by the name of James White back in New England. And one last thing, let's talk about this Tampa Bay defense. Having Akeem Hicks out there and Vita Vea, that's just not fair. That should not be allowed. Anyway, let's go talk about the Tennessee Titans. Malik Willis, he is giving me serious Jalen Hurts vibes. A player we overlooked early and towards the end of last season, it becomes apparently clear that he's going to be the option, the best option for the Titans moving forward. Heck, Willis and Treylon Burks appear to have developed some chemistry late in camp now that Burks has finally been able to catch his breath. During the final preseason game, Willis ran for 79 yards and went 15 of 23 for 131 yards. Now, Willis, he is going to make Mike Vrabel scratch his head, throw his headset from time to time, but the talent, it is special. There's very good reason, I'm sure, that the Titans, they dealt A.J. Brown and drafted Treylon Burks. And finally, none of Ryan Tannehill's $27 million base contract is guaranteed in 2023. None of it. So if the Titans find themselves slipping out of the playoff race, you can expect Malik Willis to come in there and get a little bit of run. Let's talk about the Washington Commanders. It feels as though Antonio Gibson, that experiment there in Washington, it is over. Unless Ron Rivera is just messing with us. It is hard to believe that you would stick a back coming off back-to-back 1,000 scrimmage yard seasons, back-to-back 10-plus touchdown seasons, and stick him and relegate him to kickoff duties. I love myself some Brian Robinson as much as anybody. And if you're looking for a thumper, he's your guy. We've all heard that Gibson is more athletic, more talented. But you know what? If you can't hang on to the ball, you're not going to get on the field. At the wide receiver position, it looks like Jahan Dotson will be the perfect complement to Terry McLaurin. And for good reason here. when I think about Jahan Dotson, I can't help but shake the feeling that the rookie has a strong possibility to outperform the veteran here in 2022. Dotson had the best hands in this past April's draft, and all indications early throughout camp are he is doing everything you would expect and more from a veteran, except he is just a rookie. With Carson Wentz under center during the preseason, Dotson was the only receiver to receive a 100% route participation. Dotson is that guy you do not want to leave your draft without. He is right up there with Wan'Dale Robinson, in my opinion. Draft capital, it's there. No competition in that spot there for wide receiver 2. The wide receiver strength of schedule for the Commanders is the 6th easiest, and you have to believe he's virtually going to go outperform the current ADP of wide receiver 62. With that all being said, this has been Viper Bites. If you like what you're listening to, head over to fantasypoints.com. Use promo code 22Vipers10. Get 10% off that Fantasy Point subscription. We are about to kick off week number 1 of the regular season. Let's get it on, and we will see you next time.